Hi everyone, this is Vanessa, also known as the International Immigrant, and welcome to my podcast. This is a place where we discuss everything immigration related, from the desire to work in another country for a few years to test the waters, to studying abroad in the hopes of opening up some opportunities, and of course, full immigration with a cargo container of furniture and a residence visa stamped in your passport. If this is your first time and you want to know who I am and why I started this podcast, please watch or listen to the first episode, as there are both audio and video versions available. Today, I'm going to be chatting to a guest that many of you know from a few podcasts ago, Kim. She's currently living in Belgrade with her partner and spoke about her immigration journeys through New Zealand, Australia, and now Serbia. She also talked about her travels alone as a single woman. And today we are going to chat about our experiences of making friendships around the world and how important it has been to combat loneliness. We will also discuss the most effective strategies that both of us have used in making friends along our journeys. So, hello, my friend, and welcome back.
Hello, thank you for having me again.
Anytime.
Nice to be speaking with you.
I know, all the way across the ocean. So, can you give us a little update? Has anything changed since the last podcast with your time in Serbia?
Other than the fact that COVID restrictions have started to relax here, but I've also started to learn Serbian. So, dobar dan to anybody who is listening from Serbia. My Serbian is still pretty rusty, and I'm learning my fruit and vegetables, and I can count to 10. Basic things like that. But yes, as an English person, it's definitely been challenging to learn the new sounds, the ch and the t and the the sort of the different sort of elements of the Cyrillic alphabet. But yeah, it's fun. I'm excited. I go downstairs and I talk to our sort of apartment receptionists and sort of practice my Serbian with them, and they're very patient, bless their hearts.
I love that. I love that. I know. And it's funny because I've kind of started learning Spanish again. And so that's sort of been a little bit interesting to get back into some of that. And I have realized how much kind of stuck in my head, even though I haven't used it, and then some of it coming back. So it's good to use the time to learn some other language, since there's not a lot that we're able to do these days during a pandemic.
Very much so, yes. You're sort of restricted to your own company a bit.
Right, which kind of leads us into today's topic perfectly, making friends. So, I mean, at the end, we'll kind of get to you in Serbia now, which I'm sure both of us can guess. But your first move, right, your first immigration move was to New Zealand, right? I mean, you went to New Zealand first before you did your travel alone.
Correct. Yes.
So, and you mentioned in your first podcast that you went to New Zealand because you had met a guy in the UK and he was a New Zealander, and so you went to New Zealand with him.
That's very true. Yes, that's all true. So yes, we migrated. He actually went 2 months ahead of me, which at the time we thought was probably a good thing. He could find us a home and get himself set up with a job and have the income ready for when I arrived to help support us. But probably looking back, it probably would have been better to have done it at the same time, for various other reasons. But yes, I went with a partner. So in some respects, I think I relied an awful lot in the beginning on him and his friends group, which were friends he'd been at school with and left behind and had been abroad for 8-9 years. So there weren't necessarily people I had a lot in common with, maybe. They were, a majority of them were obviously men. So I, tried to make friends with their partners, and some of it was more successful than others. But I think the best way I made friends in New Zealand, to be truthful with you, was actually through a work situation in, I think I talked about the fact I went and did some temping as part of my first sort of trying to get in the door and get to know people and get work. And through Kelly Services was actually one of the ways I actually made friends of my own away from my partner's family and friend set. And I think that was it was actually just purely by going on the temping assignments, 1 week here, 2 weeks there. And the same companies that are using a temping service will potentially have 1 or 2 temps, employees in their offices at one time. So naturally, at that point in time, we were all of the same mindset. We were all, expats in a different country trying to find work. Primarily, and a lot of us actually were English in New Zealand at that point in time. So you sort of find your kin, if that makes sense. You sort of click with the people that you have something in common with, even if it's just the same country you come from, or the fact that you're doing the same kind of temping experience. And Kelly Services, I don't know if they, I haven't worked with them for a very long time, but at the time they used to do, get-togethers of all their temps and stuff. But because they were having those social meetups or those social interactions, you could potentially then make other, you could exchange your notes with other temporary workers and sort of say, hey, have you been to this company, what would it like, and what's your experience, and things like that. So actually I gelled very quickly with an English girl and an English gentleman who just happened to be on their traveling experiences, working holiday visas, and supporting their travels by working. And we had the World Cup rugby whilst I was there, so all being English, we all got face paint on, we all went and put our red and white on, we all went and watched, we're all rugby fans, we all went and watched the rugby together. So you just build those kind of relationships. One thing I would say is you have to be prepared to be lonely. Any move to any part of any country, let's say even in England, when I've moved around England, you might be 4 hours down the road from where you were before, but you're actually in a new area where you still have to get off your arse, so to speak, and actually make the effort and actually go and integrate with people and find those kinships, those friendships. So it doesn't just have to be the fact that you're moving to a new country or what have you. Some countries are vast and it's moving from one side of the country to another another state in that country. But yeah, I would say whenever you get the opportunity, an invite or whatever it is, my philosophy has always been to say yes. You may be tired, you may be worn out, you may be feeling a bit of, I have moments where I can be totally introverted and I don't want to be out socializing. But I think if someone invites you to a barbecue, or if someone invites you for a drink, or somebody says, hey, do you want to go for a walk, or do you want to go for coffee? Always say yes, even if you don't necessarily believe that you have something in common with that person. You never know where that friendship may lead, or more importantly, if they're inviting you to a bigger social event, you might meet somebody else at that social event who you actually gel with and click with straight away. So, don't be afraid. You will be lonely. I'm not going to lie. I have been lonely along many points of my journeys. But, get out there. You've really got to be brave. You've got to expose yourself to some degree. You've got to show who you are to people. There was definitely a time in my Australian experience where you end up feeling a bit like a repetitive rabbit, where you sort of, you're having the same conversations with people over and over again because you're forever introducing yourself and saying, oh, where are you from? What do you do? And that got exhausting after a while. I was going to a lot of meetups. So I don't know if anyone's heard of the Meetup network or groups, but they arrange, sort of events where you can either just go and play jigsaw puzzles, or, you can do coding or whatever it may be. And of course, you're meeting a lot of new people every time you might go to these groups. And, if you're being brave and being true and actually trying to walk up to people, introduce yourself, don't be afraid to do that. Everyone's in the same boat at the end of the day. But yeah, it can feel a bit like, I've got to find the energy to do this again and put on that happy, brave face and, go and say, hi, my name's Kim. And, what are you up to? Where are you from? What I would say, a big tip, everybody loves talking about themselves.
I know.
So if you look at me, I'm not shutting up. But if you can engage somebody in a conversation, don't bore them about you. But I'm doing that now. But potentially people.
Yeah, but that's what I brought you on to do.
Fair enough. People will happily. They're more comfortable if you engage questions about them. If you ask them about them. And
it's the same as a first date. I mean, at the end of the day, a friendship or a romantic relationship is fundamentally the same beast. You need to have something in common. You need to feel some level of chemistry with the person. You need to feel understood. In fact, friendships sometimes actually allow for more vulnerability than romantic relationships, because there you're still guarding certain things depending on how long the relationship lasts. And so you would approach it in the same way. I mean, I'll go on a little bit later on to our date, but what I was just going to do is going back to New Zealand. I did the same thing as you. I went with a South African partner. We emigrated together to New Zealand. So we had each other. That was the only one where I kind of had someone effectively at the beginning. And so we became, and we did what you did. We literally found some South Africans that we gelled with, even though we had left South Africa for a reason. Our closest friends was another lesbian couple that we found that had immigrated to, was in the same city. When we first got there, I stayed with a South African guy that my family used to know through Rotary in South Africa. And we made American friends, we made British friends, we made South African friends, we made couple friends with people who were expats. Who were immigrants, because we had this kind of common thing. And then my ex, her cousin played for the Springbok rugby team at the time. And so she was rugby crazy. And like you, we went to one match, I think, but it was so bloody cold in Wellington, New Zealand, that we didn't really want to go out much at all. But yes, we literally made those friends the same way that you did. We didn't feel the need for groups. And then where I also, because your relationship ended in New Zealand, right? And then at that point, you decided to go back to the UK.
The relationship ended. I actually went and found my brother. He was traveling around the globe. He happened to be arriving in Australia. So I actually went and did six weeks travel up the east coast of Australia with my brother, purely just to cry on his shoulder and, try and put the events of my broken heart to the side. Didn't really work, but anyhow. But I then returned to New Zealand after that little period of travel, and was there for perhaps another 5-6 months, pursuing options to remain in New Zealand as a resident of some kind. Right. And actually had a company sponsor me, and it was only at the end of that paperwork process of getting that sponsorship approved and the visa to stay that I then realized that in my heart of hearts, I needed to go home, and that New Zealand wasn't the place for me at that time. But yes, having all that friend and family network lost because of the breakdown of the relationship in New Zealand does force you. Obviously, you're upset and you're lonely anyway, as you would be anywhere nursing a broken heart. But yes, it does sort of force you to then sort of go, okay, well, I need to meet people. I need to do things. I need to, make yourself happy and, change your scenery or what have you. And I think if you're a sports person, not everybody is actively a player of sports. Like, I'm not a team sport person per se, but let's say you're a football person, you could go and find a local five-a-side team and, or netball team or whatever it is. That's one way of getting into friendship groups. My activities are quite loner activities. And the fact I like photography, I like walking, I like swimming, but I'm not necessarily going to, join a swim squad and swim up and down in a team environment and train. But those are things that you can do. Just think about what your hobbies, your passions, the side projects you've always wanted to do but never got around to doing, and what your true values are that you want to do. And just seize that moment and go and do a photography course, even if it's only like a one-day sort of workshop or whatever it is. You will probably find that there are people on that workshop or that course or that activity, just purely because you're both doing the same hobby or interest, that you will probably click with, and that then you can potentially go for a coffee with afterwards, or you can keep in touch with and ask for tips or what have you. So again, it means putting yourself out there. It means being brave. You've got to, be very courageous and put yourself and expose yourself again to people. But But
And
yeah,
I agree. And also certain cultures are more open to it. I don't know how you found, but I found that when I went to Australia, they're the kind of people that say, you know, we're going to have a barbie, or we're going down to the beach, or we're going to do this, you know, come along, come along. They're very much kind of come along type of people, I noticed. And so it was probably one of the easiest places for me to make friends, because everybody just, like, the moment you meet a group or you meet a few people or you've met one person and they take you somewhere, automatically you've got a whole bunch of other. Now, I don't know if your Australian experience was similar. What I do say to a lot of my students who are concerned about making friends is I say exactly what you've kind of mentioned already. If you have like an interest in photography or hiking or whatever, find a group that does that. And you did mention Meetup, and it was something that I had every intention of mentioning today. Meetup, which a lot of my students have not heard of because it's not big in their countries. In Australia, when I was leaving, I really started to engage with it. I think it was growing there. In the US and Canada, it's huge. So Meetup, you know, you go onto meetup.com, you put the location that you're in, you can set it for searching within a 50-kilometer radius, I think is usually the default. And then you put in like photography or whatever. Because I'm gay, I usually look for gay and lesbian organizations first, because that's just so much easier for me. It's like a little community that's kind of ready-made. And you look to see what's going on. You can ask to join a group. You can see when they have an event, and the bravery comes in to show up on your own. And then Facebook, like, I don't know about you, but Facebook have a lot of groups, a lot of people. They kind of, you know, you search in your city for a group that you're interested in, you join it, you can chat a little bit with people if you want to first. Usually the host of the group is quite welcoming, and then they'll say, you know, we're doing this event, and you kind of show up and you feel a little bit spare, and depending on where you are, they usually make you quite comfortable. And the third one that I wanted to mention was your nationality. I've got a lot of Turkish students, and I said to them, like, I just searched online, there are Turkish associations everywhere. Contact the association before you even go to that country and make some friends. I contacted some friends in Australia when I knew I was moving from New Zealand to Australia. I made a friend in America before I was moving to America. It's just somebody a face that you know when you first get there.
Definitely. I must admit, I've never used the Facebook groups until we arrived in Serbia. And there is a couple here, you know, expats, or there's, you know, the Belgrade Foreign Visitors Club. And you're right, it was a very different experience for me migrating here in a pandemic time where, you know, social meetings, social gatherings are, you know, can't happen, you know, for proximity reasons, etc. So, you know, that's actually having the Facebook group was actually quite, you know, a new experience for me, because you can still do that online chat. There are a lot of people asking questions where about, hey, where do I get my vaccine, or where can I buy, you know, salt and vinegar crisps, or whatever it is, you know, stuff that, you know, very important to somebody who can't get it, and, you know, new in a city. You know, those kind of communities can help for a variety of reasons, not just to make a friend group, but yes, for the practicalities of life as well, about, well, where do I go to do this and how can I do that? And yes, I've actually, since the pandemic restrictions have relaxed a bit here, of the group, the lady who runs the Facebook group here, has actually started to do outdoor events. So they've done like a walking meetup, a walking sort of event that we went to. So my partner and myself went on their first walking event to, you know, where we got to meet and talk to other people, pretty much, you know, some local Serbians as well as expats in Serbia. And it was just an amazing thing to be able to talk to other people other than each other, you know, because obviously in a pandemic situation, you're pretty much caught up with your loved ones.
And even
but
not
also
in a
at the same
pandemic
time,
situation,
they've done a mountain bike.
Sorry, there's a bit of a lag for those that are listening and
No,
watching. I think even when not in a pandemic, I mean, I know when my ex and I were in New Zealand, it was so cold. We were always at home. We did make friends, but eventually we just ended up hanging out with each other a lot just due to circumstances. And you get some cabin fever. Like no matter how much you love someone, if they are all you see, all you interact with, all you speak with, you're more likely to, want to get away from them for a few hours. And so, yes, those external friendships are so, so, so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's no harm in having that sort of me time or away time or, just space from each other, allow yourself to breathe. And each of you will have your own hobbies. Like my partner at the moment is into golf. He loves, his golf. So, he wants to join a local golf club here and make friends that way. And, that is healthy as well for you both to have your own, interests and hobby groups. So, there are lots of different ways to integrate yourself, or like you said, to, use Meetup or Facebook groups or seek out expats. You asked me whether or not my experience in Australia was the same as yours, and it wasn't actually. I found my experience in Australia to be quite hard in the beginning. I made a lot of friends very quickly through an expat community, but actually making Australian friends for me took a lot longer. And that eventually came through working, and it was good 6 months, maybe 8 months into the working career to then actually, get a really good group of girlfriends through work who then we did stuff outside of work with, so it wasn't necessarily the, I met a lot of, like you, South Africans and sort of English people and sort of New Zealanders and French randomly in Australia. There was a lot of different nationalities that I met through the walking groups I joined, or, there's the sporting activities and things that I did. But yes, there wasn't a lot of Australian friends. One thing that I did do in Australia, which is something which was really beneficial and possibly something that your listeners might want to do for themselves. I moved to Australia as an individual. I didn't go with a partner. And what I did on arriving in Australia was I actually put myself into a backpackers and stayed there, I think, maybe 6 to 8 weeks in the end. Purely because I didn't have permanent accommodation when I first arrived, so I had to find temporary accommodation. But rather than putting myself into a hotel or a service apartment or whatever, or an Airbnb or whatever it is that people want to do, I just, even though I was going to work every day and I was getting up and doing the routine, I still spent time in a backpackers. And it was actually really good because I got to meet a lot of people of like-minded interests. Obviously, that was how I made a lot of expat friends as well. But I then found 2 individuals to then go and rent a house together. So there was a female who was in Australia for a year. There happened to be an Australian who had relocated from one side of Australia to the other. And the 3 of us then actually went off and went to look for a rental property, to rent together as our more permanent accommodation. So that was actually a really good way of getting friend sets, getting a social life, because obviously in a backpackers, there's always activities going on. It was a very small family-friendly backpackers where they did barbecues in the back garden, and you'd all go out for drinks and stuff, and there's always activities, always lots of different people to talk to. Okay, there's a lot of transient people, so prepared to make friends and then lose friends. At the end of that first year in Australia, and even at the end of the second year, I found a lot of those people I'd made friends with in that first period had experienced their time in Australia, and for whatever reason were leaving and going home or moving on to the next country. And then you find yourself back to stage 1 where you go, oh, okay, well, and I need to make more friend groups and get out there again. But yeah, the life of the backpackers, even though I was working and you get noise and you get woken up in the night, I just had to be patient. And I was like, you know what, this is
part of the journey.
Yeah, and it doesn't suit everybody, but it actually was really good at the time to not be lonely, to have company. You can put yourself in your room and, on your bunk bed or whatever and read and close yourself off. Or you can go and sit in the living area and watch television with other people. Or you can sit around a dining table and chat to people while you're having your dinner. Or you can sit in the garden and have a beer with somebody. Right. It gives you a lot of opportunity and a lot of conversations. And, you know, you can have your privacy if you want it to some degree. But yeah, that was a really good, you know, probably a really good tip for somebody is, you know, don't go and isolate yourself if you don't have to.
Look,
Because
absolutely. And two things that might really come to mind with what you've been saying now is, number one, circumstances of how you choose to emigrate impact you greatly. You and I both moved to New Zealand. I moved with partners. I moved with one from South Africa. We went together. We were able to rely on each other, meet friends slowly. We met more couple friends. We were in a relationship. You integrated into his circle of friends initially. We both went to Australia individually. You moved into a backpackers. One of the greatest sources for me definitely is the gay community. It is a marginalized community. And when you find a marginalized community, they generally do stick together. But as you were talking, I was trying to think what were the nationality of the people in there. And I had a very good New Zealand friend and another friend who'd sort of moved around, and I couldn't remember immediately how many of them were Australians, because Perth, where we both were, is quite a cliquey city. Both of us made friends through work. It's one of the easiest ways. However, if you are married, if you are a woman, you are going with your children and your husband is at work and he's making friends that way, what do you do? And I always suggest to my students who are potentially in that position, make friends with your kids' parents. Now, they may not be your best friend, but even in my life, like, I don't have children, you don't have children, we don't have this experience, but my mom will tell me, like, two of her closest friends to this very day are people that she met through us. One, they lived just down the road and us kids played together. The second one, my sister went to school with her daughter and they are still friends today. So making friends with your kids' parents is like, take them to play groups, take them to the park, take them to daycare, like hang around, chat to the parents. That is going to be so much better for you if you're not working. And if you don't have time to do a hobby and go and hang out with like-minded people, meet people through your kids.
Yes, like, obviously I can't talk about that because, yes, as you mentioned, I don't have children. But yes, I do know from witnessing friends who are just, you know, taking a break from work and carving a new, you know, chapter in their lives. You know, it's mother and baby groups or you know, swimming classes with your children, or, you know, the school, you know, PTA, Parent Teachers Association, or whatever they might call them, you know, sort of the fates and the things that you have to get involved in, or talking at the school gate. You know, there are definitely, my mum definitely made some lifetime friends through us as we, you know, were growing up. So yes, it's you know, it's going to be hard. Anyway, you have to introduce yourself. Anyway, you have to put yourself forward and try and break down those barriers where people might already be what you feel in a cliquey group or in a close network, to sort of not muscle in, but, you know, to try and sort of, you know, be seen or to be heard. But yes, you know, there's the good thing is, like, here, like, my partner's working, I'm not, and obviously, you know, social gatherings and groups, you know, I looked to meet it when I first got here, but, you know, there wasn't any groups happening at the moment because they were all paused because of, you know, the pandemic measures. But I have made some friends via other partners' wives, you know, so, you know, there are other women, you know, here who are also isolated at home with children or not. And, you know, you have the time, you know, sometimes you have to go out of your way to meet them, you know, in the cold or in the rain or what have you, or in a coffee shop if you can, you know, but just those hours or, you know, half an hour's, you know, can go a long way to giving you some mental relief and social integration, as well as those people that you meet up with. You know, don't assume that you are the only person suffering alone. There is every face, every person you come across has their own internal battles, their own loneliness that they're struggling with, even if they're at home with family and kids. You know, it's everybody wants to make friends. It's just one of the hardest things to do.
It is, and I also still go back to different countries, and I've said in videos before, a country is like a person. It has a personality, it really does. And if the personality of that country or that city, even sometimes it's down to a city or culture, works well with your personality, certain things will work better. I mean, my journey to make friends in Australia was really easy, and my journey to make friends in America was really easy. I love my American friends. I was brought into the fold, fairly quickly, and made some friends, and went to a lot of meetup things and got to know people. And I just found them, for me personally, to be extremely friendly. Canada was a bit of a different story because I didn't have my own car. It was sort of going into, it was fall when I got there, and finally sort of going into winter when I was able to get out a little bit. And then the pandemic started to happen, and thank God, like a week before the pandemic, I had met two friends, and we became each other's everything during those months. We met every 2 or 3 weeks in the backyard of the house that I was staying, and we had a fire pit, and we chatted and we laughed, and we were all 3 single, all of us gay, and so we had a lot of similarities, and we just enjoyed each other's company. But I did find it hard in the little bit of time that I had before the pandemic to break through in Canada. And I actually chatted to an expat friend, like one of my mother's very good friends that I mentioned lived just down the road. They live in Vancouver, and I chatted to her one time, and I said, "Are Canadians difficult to make friends with?" And she said, "They are. They kind of keep themselves at a distance. They kind of protect their hearts, and you really have to try and get in there to make friendships with them." I was just in a lucky or unlucky, depending on how you look at it, situation that a pandemic forced 3 people together to save our sanity, really. But I don't know what you think about that. Like, if you think that certain cities or certain countries have been easier for you potentially because of the culture or the personality of the people.
The culture of the people. Look, I can't talk as Australia as a whole. I can only talk of Perth because and Perth is one of the most isolated cities in the world. People who grow up there might go abroad and travel, but a lot of them will return there. So they have their friend groups that they grew up with in school, that they, whether it's, infant schools, juniors or secondaries or what have you. Their childhood friends who all just live down the road, that they still are in those friend sets even when they start work, and then they might have a second friend set, which is their sporting groups or their work groups. For me, like I said, it took me, I would say, a good year in Perth to feel like I had Australian friends. I had a lot of expat friends, a lot of transient people who were moving through, or like me, were trying to settle in Australia. So it's, New Zealand was very different. I found, probably because I had a heartbreak and I was in a sad place, the Kiwis were very compassionate to me. And like I said before in the previous interview with you, there was a lot of people that went out of their way to help me. And, I don't know if that's true of the whole, I would like to think that's true of everywhere, but, whether that's true of Auckland and the New Zealanders that I met on my journey there. But even traveling as a young individual woman in my 30s, as a single woman, there's plenty of cities I went to where I could have a chance to just meet these people in random locations. And, they live in the city, but they're actually quite proud of their home and their cities. And they actually go out of their way for a day or two to take you to places or show you around, or, so, I think it's, sometimes it's chance, sometimes it's you being brave, sometimes it's you saying yes.
I believe a lot of it is you saying yes. I think you've hit the nail on the head, to be perfectly honest. I think if you're, I have not been shy about this information. I'm so glad that you are here telling a bit of a different story about New Zealand. For me personally, it was a very difficult time in my life, and I think I just wasn't saying yes. I think that was a huge thing for me. I just wasn't saying yes. And in Costa Rica, I wasn't saying yes. I had some workmates from England, sorry, from the US and Canada, younger people that I became friendly with. And I had a couple of Costa Rican friends that I could have actually gotten closer with, but I just wasn't saying yes. I was kind of shut down emotionally. I really struggled in New Zealand. I had the heartbreak of having to leave the US when I was in Costa Rica. I just wasn't open. When I went to the US, I was super open. When I went to Australia, I was super open. When I went to Canada, I just wasn't sure. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. If you are open and you're in a yes phase where I'm going to make this work, I don't know how long it's going to work for, but I'm going to make this work. Yeah, I think the universe just brings you those encounters that you need and that open you up without a shadow of a doubt. I think you're 100% correct.
Mm. And the other thing we haven't touched upon is volunteering. There's, you can, some countries are a bit funny about, you volunteering on certain visas, but that's another story for another day. But yes, if you can volunteer in the country you're on, and, maybe that's feeding the homeless. We've both done that
Right.
on our journeys in Australia, or I helped 2 young children with their learning English experience, and I didn't charge for that. That was just me trying to give back, and various other things. If you can volunteer in some way, those volunteering groups will open you up to like-minded people and to friend sets. So it's not just about work and sport or hobbies, but in those real genuine sort of opening heart moments where you decide that you're going to assist, even if it's just litter picking on an organized walk, or planting trees or something. They've been planting trees in Serbia recently, and they ask for people to go and assist. Those are the kind of things where you can lend a hand, talk to other people, and either connect. But yes, you do have to be prepared to be lonely. You do have to be prepared to give it patience. You do have to be prepared to put yourself out there and be brave and show who you are to people, and have a lot of repetitive conversations about who you are, and et cetera, et cetera. But I think a laugh always helps and breaks the ice. Like, you haven't really explained our first meeting, but our first meeting was actually arranged by a mutual friend. So
it was a non-romantic date.
Yeah, exactly. We went on a blind friend date, in the fact that we had a mutual friend who said, "Hey, this is really random, Kim, but I think I know somebody that you'll really get on well with." I presume she said the same to you. And
we did. And at that point, I mean, I'd been there for many years. I don't know how long you'd been there, and we kind of made friendship circles. But I think she was an alternative healer, and she was working with both of us on different things. And I just think we were at a certain point in our lives I just thought, you guys are going through some similar things. You guys need to get together and chat about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I can remember thinking, this is so absurd. I'm going on a blind date. It's not a romantic date. It's a friendship date. And it was a bit like, holy, who does this? But yeah, as soon as we got there, she was right. We clicked, and we bent each other's ears off, talking all night long, So it's, strange things can happen. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if either one of us had gone, no, that's a really weird experience, I'm not going to go and meet a total stranger and for a coffee or what have you, the friendship wouldn't have happened. But yeah, you do have to sort of open your mind, open your heart, and I keep saying it, just be brave and courageous, and introduce yourself. It's hard, and I have been lonely. There's plenty of times you get lonely. I may sit here with a smile on my face and look like the epitome of happiness, but like everybody, there are plenty of times in life where you have to be happy with your own company, or you're going on a walk on your own again for the how many weekends in a row, and it's just something you have to get used to. So,
look, absolutely. I mean, look, I am back right now. I mean, to your point, I am back in my home country where I was born, I was raised, I lived here for 30 years before I immigrated 18 years ago. But I have moved and changed so significantly. And this was actually a little bit further down. I was going to say to you that I have changed so much that my outlook on life has changed. And I have friends here that I've known for the longest time. But and they're great, and I can chat to them like no time has passed. But I'm still feeling lonely at the moment. I'm still feeling isolated because the people that I'm the closest to emotionally, the people that seem to get me at this stage of my life, are living in other countries. You in Serbia, my friends in America, my friends in Canada, they are worlds away. I don't have access to them in person. And I have felt quite a considerable amount of loneliness here in the house with my family over the last 6 months.
Yeah, and that's sad to hear, but it's I suppose it's good that you have kinships, even if they're on the other side of the world, you know.
Yeah.
The fact that you can still reach out and talk to people, and we're lucky in a technical age where everyone's now getting more conversed in Zoom or, you know, video calls or, you know, FaceTime or whatever it is, to actually, you know, pick the phone up or pick up, you know, and chat to somebody from afar and feel vulnerable and actually be able to say to somebody, hey, you know, I'm lonely, I want help, or have you got 10 minutes for chat or what have you?
Yeah.
You know,
we are. And absolutely, I agree with you. We are so lucky that we have this. I still think that there is nothing that beats being right there next to somebody. There's just something about that personal, that just being in the same space that just makes a world of difference. But I did want to ask you something. The friendships that you made when you were traveling, the friendships in all of these countries, there's two things I want to ask you about these. The first one is, are you still in touch with a lot of these people?
Yes and no. Obviously, I'm in contact with you. There are a lot of people that I remain in contact with via social media of some description. I think it depends on where your lives are going. Sometimes your lives end up going on different paths. You know, people have families or they move to other parts of the country or what have you.
Or you just change as a person through your own experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you grow, you become somebody else or what have you, or you find your peace in other places. But yeah, I would say I'm in contact with, you know, people I've made friendships with in Australia still, even though I'm no longer there. You know, there's people, not so much the New Zealand period now. There are definitely people that, you know, are at the other end of the social network, shall I say, on social media. But, you know, maybe I wouldn't pick the phone up and talk to them as regularly. But when I have been traveling around the world, I have gone back and seen those people. I've sought them out and said, hey, I'm in town, do you want to go for a drink or what have you? So, you know, it's also really handy to have those contacts and catch up with people. And it's surprising, time doesn't pass, even though you may have had 10 years apart or what have you. You know, you can rock up in Bangkok and see the person that you were working with, you know, 10 years previously in Auckland, and actually catch up as though no time's gone by, and, you know, spend some time seeing them in their new city and their new environment and their new life. So, you know, it's those kinships, you know, those true kinships are still there. Yeah.
And the second question I want to ask you is, how do they compare with lifelong friendships? Do you have lifelong childhood friendships in the UK that still exist? And are they comparable with those that you've made through your different immigration journeys?
I do have lifelong friendships. I would say those lifelong friendships, though, those true friendships, those people who would get on a plane and help you out or come and sort you out if, you know, God forbid you were really ill, you can count on one hand. You know, my father taught me this a long time ago when he was really ill. He said those, you know, the true friends that came and assisted him when he needed help, you know, they didn't mass more than 5 people. So yes, I do have those people. You know, they tend, like I said, they tend to be people that you share so much background and history with and life experiences with, that yes, you can click back into conversations even if you haven't spoken to them for a while, or, you know, you can still support them from afar. You know, there's, you know, those friends you know, I try and make sure that I am talking to. So if anything, they are comparable. Sometimes they're stronger. You know, those are the people you go out of your way to try and seek out and see when you go home or when you go back to those places where they might be. or they go out of their way to come and seek you if you happen to be, it's hard because, yes, everybody, like you said, everybody moves on with life. Everybody has new things in their life, whether it's family or partners. But yes, they're definitely comparable, and they're definitely there, if not stronger, relationships.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I have very few friendships here that have basically become lifelong friendships, some of my older friendships, and they sought me out when I got back, and I told them that I was back, or I was coming back without a doubt. And I think for me, I don't know if you ever had a jump in your life, but I've had such a significant jump in who I am in the last 3 years that it's just been something that I've noticed by dealing with people that I know, dealing with different friendships, how I feel at the end of conversations, how I feel after an interaction with a friend. And it's been quite an eye-opener for me. You move around the world a lot, you do all of these things, and then you get something new that jumps out and says, hey, you haven't experienced me before, here we go. And so, yeah, I mean, it's been an eye-opener for me, I must say.
Definitely. And I suppose, like, distance doesn't matter to those lifelong friendships, whether they're the people that you went to school with, or you have a real kinship with from, young adulthood, or somebody you met, only 2 years ago. They are what they are. They're true and authentic if you're both putting the time and energy into the relationship, and you both truly connect on whatever ways that brought you together or keep you together as friends.
I agree. So basically, sort of what I want to sum up with, and then I'm going to ask you if you've got anything extra to say, or that, because we've covered, I think, pretty much a lot of this subject. And so basically what I would say is to people listening, you will make friendships. You will make friendships. It's an inevitable thing. The question is, are you going to say yes? Are you going to say no? Are you going to jump right in? Are you going to be a little bit reticent? Are you going to make them through colleagues? Are you going to make them through interests? Are you going to initially make friends with your own nationality, seek out the Turkish Association or the Islamic Association or the British expats or the South Africans? Or, are you going to immediately go back into a comfort zone and then slowly find your way out into the world? Are you going to meet them through your children? Are you going to meet them through a potential partner? There are so many different avenues to making friends, because some of my single students who are considering moving, this is one of the things that concerns them the most. And I say to them, there are so many avenues, and you and I have just discussed them, and you and I are two single women who have done this on multiple occasions. Yes, you will. It's just a matter of time. And as you've mentioned, patience and the willingness to just say yes to everything that comes along, even if you don't feel like it, is what saves you. And I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to that.
No, you've pretty much summed it up. What I would say is have faith. And yes, one thing we didn't talk about is faith groups.
True.
I'm not sure about your religious background, but I'm Christian, but I'm not a practicing Christian in every sense of the manner that a lot of other people might be. But there are, faith groups around the world that you can obviously find kinship at, and make introductions that way. And like you said, reach out to connections of connections, or people that you might know who are already in the country, and see if you can catch up with them for a coffee or what have you. It's pretty much what you said, but be patient, be brave, and at the end of the day, don't beat yourself up about being lonely. If you're lonely, it's, it will come with time. It's just a matter of having faith.
I agree with you. And don't be put off when your alternative healer sets you up on a friendship bound.
I know, it's crazy as it
Good
sounds,
things
go
to
with the
come.
flow.
It did. I don't know. It was great. As far as I'm concerned, she was right on the money, and I am so thankful to God that she did, because you are one of the dearest people in my life. What can I say? And on that
Likewise,
note,
thank you.
and on that note, thank you all for listening. And if you want to see the video version of this podcast and you're listening to the audio version, please go to my YouTube channel, type in International Immigrant, and you can also follow me on Instagram, international_immigrant. Sorry, let me find my tongue and say that again. International_immigrant. If you have any questions that you would like me to answer in future episodes or in just little standalone videos, please feel free to ask in the comments section on any of my platforms. And from my international immigrant journey to yours, see you next time.